The world without us would be frankly a more peaceful place, says Wiseman. In the book The World Without Us, Alan Wiseman explains how the world would be after humans disappear. How would atmosphere change? How would animals and plant life change? He begins his timeline of the first few months of human disappearance by noting that endangered species will start recovering. As time goes on into decades and centuries, it is noted that streets and buildings will be overgrown and flooded. Architecture will collapse and atmospheric gases will return to pre-industrial levels. We seek author Christy Hamilton for details.
If this happened to every human on Earth at the exact same time, what consequences would ensure? This thought experiment not only explores the impact that humanity has on the Earth, but also the incredible resilience of nature. So what would transpire? First of all, power plants would run out of fuel, and electrical fences would cease to work, releasing nearly 1.5 billion cows, 1 billion pigs, and 20 billion chickens into the wild. Roadways would turn into rivers, wooden houses would catch on fire, and concrete buildings would crumble.
Before predicting the future, Alan Wiseman must look at the past. He begins by explaining the ice ages. Before humans, most of Canada and northern United States were covered in ice sheets, and species today were more populated. He predicted this extent of ice sheets based on how similar the features are at glaciers and other ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica. In that perspective, Wiseman believed that within this time of the Ice Age, it changed the course of evolution, allowing certain species to become extinct and others to survive. This led to Wiseman to believe that chimpanzees, for one example, who can be related to human ancestry, had no real predators or each other, and were equipped with a gene of adaptability. They were able to live off all kinds of food due to the lack of predators. This allowed Wiseman to predict what would happen to our own ecosystem, where after humans disappear, animals such as family dogs or cats would feed off our agriculture and livestock, but then be hunted down by real predators.
ASAP Science has more.
From damming rivers to changing the chemistry of the atmosphere, humans have had a powerful impact on our planet. But what would happen if we suddenly disappeared? The first few weeks would be chaotic. Within hours, power plants would run out of fuel and shut down. As lights go out and electric fences lose their sting, over 1.5 billion cows, nearly 8 billion pigs, and more than 20 billion chickens will break out of their enclosures, desperate for food. Without any humans to feed them, most of these livestock will starve or become food for over 500 million dogs and a roughly equal number of cats who now have to fend for themselves. Of course, many of our fancy breeds are ill-suited for life in the wild and will probably be outcompeted by hardier mutts, not to mention wolves, coyotes, and wildcats.
Another major problem is human trash, which will be relevant to when humans disappear.
But if anything will outlast us on Earth, it may be our trash. The chemical bonds that hold together plastics or vulcanized rubber are immune to most of the digestive enzymes used by bacteria to break down natural polymers, and unlike metals, plastics don't rust or corrode. These microplastics escape into waterways or drift along in the ocean and are eventually deposited in sediments.
But then there are human inventions. One like the invention of Freon and the use of uranium, the invention of plastic and the use of auto manufacturers, which causes the emission of CO2. Most of which dismantle Earth's ozone levels and affects our physical environment. This creates major problems to the Earth's atmosphere because it destroys the ozone layer, which protects us from the harmful radiation from the sun and keeps most of it inside, to which warms up our climates.
Of course, whether something survives depends greatly on the conditions. Everything will last much longer in deserts where there's no moisture to speed up rusting or support decomposing organisms. And while the carbon cycle will return CO2 levels to equilibrium after a few thousand years, local deposits of long-lived organic chemicals or radioactive material could persist for a very, very long time.
In time, though, there is a ozone healing process, but this takes up at least half a century to heal. With humans being around, it won't be healing anytime soon, with all the chemicals being sprouted by nuclear plants and trash being disputed.
In the end, Wiseman claims the solution is to stop demanding so much from our Earth and to find renewable resources to use. But for now, the conflict has not been resolved.